Good morning. Good to have you with us on a Monday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks very much for being here. We're going to begin our show with the economy and new developments in the ongoing trade war between the United States and some of its closest trading partners. Overnight, retaliatory tariffs from China targeting U.S. farm goods went into effect. Starting today, U.S. agricultural imports worth around $21 billion will be subject to an extra 15% levy. It comes as President Trump suggested on Friday that Canadian lumber and dairy could also soon face U.S. tariffs.
This clash over trade comes as Canada passes the baton to a new leader. Mark Carney will soon take over as prime minister after winning a leadership race over the weekend. A former central banker, he has vowed to keep Canada's retaliatory tariffs in place until, quote, Americans show us respect. Now, in an interview with Fox News yesterday, President Trump again defended his use of tariffs. He was then asked yesterday whether his measures could lead to a U.S. recession, which has become a growing fear. Here's how he responded.
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of it takes a little time. It takes a little time.
We've got a team standing by to talk about all this and more. We're going to start things off with NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist. So, Aaron, let's talk about these Chinese tariffs that went into effect. What U.S. imports are they targeting, and what could this all mean for farmers?
Well, Joe and Savannah, we knew that this was something that was going to be coming, and potentially this could have a big impact on farmers here in the United States. These Chinese tariffs, these retaliatory tariffs that went into effect overnight are affecting, as you indicated, the agricultural industry. 15% tariff on things like chicken, wheat, and corn from the United States, and then another 10% tariff on things like soybeans, pork, beef, and fruit. This is according to the Chinese, and we know that this is also a result of the new tariffs that President Trump placed on Chinese goods. Last week, we saw that tariff increase by 10%. There was already a 10% tariff on certain Chinese goods, most Chinese goods. The president indicated that this was a result of the inflow of fentanyl, illegal drugs coming into the United States through China, and the same was to be applied to Mexico and Canada because of the flow of fentanyl across the U.S. southern and northern borders. Although, as you noted, there have been some mitigation in those tariffs for the Canadians and for the Mexicans as well. But it seems as though even those tariffs are going to go into effect. And as you think about these products that the Chinese just hit with new tariffs overnight, you're right. Farmers are going to feel the brunt of this. The administration seems to indicate that there could be potentially more retaliation and that there would be a leveling of the playing field that potentially would help farmers here in the U.S., Joe and Savannah.
Aaron, on top of this retaliation from China that we mentioned a moment ago, also the president's looking to expand tariffs with Canada by hitting their lumber and dairy. Is the Trump administration concerned that these trade wars could push us toward a recession? We heard a little bit in that interview. We just played a little bit of there from the president. What else is he saying?
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit of a mixed message on that. The president didn't outright say, no, we're not going to see a recession, but there are other leaders in his administration who do feel as though that's not going to happen. The reality is that the president feels as though these other countries that are currently seeing additional tariffs and that will see additional tariffs come April 2nd, he's said that they are taking advantage of the United States, that the U.S. is getting ripped off. And if this country is able to start doing, if businesses are able to start doing more business here in the United States in terms of manufacturing and building, then there wouldn't be tariffs that they'd have to deal with. I want you to hear what the Commerce Secretary had to say yesterday about the idea of a recession.
There's going to be no recession in America. What there's going to be is global tariffs are going to come down because President Trump has said, you want to charge us 100%? We're going to charge you 100%. And you know what they say? They say, no, don't charge us 100%. We'll bring ours down. Foreign goods may get a little more expensive, but American goods are going to get cheaper, and you're going to be helping Americans by buying American.
Now, President Trump said that there would be a period of transition. You heard the Commerce Secretary there suggest that foreign goods could become more expensive. But that is something, Joe and Savannah, that's really driving concerns for consumers. And so when consumers are worried about prices going up, they sometimes start spending less money, even on things that maybe are American made. And so we've yet to see exactly what the repercussions will be for these tariffs, although the president seems to think that in the long run, these are going to be a good thing for the United States.
Aaron, let's ask you about something that's now a daily headline, the Trump administration's ongoing push to try and downsize the federal government. We understand now employees from the Department of Health and Human Services, they were offered voluntary buyouts to resign. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, our understanding is that this email went out Friday afternoon to all of the HHS employees offering a $25,000 payment, a buyout for them to leave government service. This is through the Voluntary Separation Incentive Payment Program. This is actually a program that we know exists within the U.S. government. There are certain things that have to be happening in order for any particular agency to trigger use of that program. And we know that this week, the administration, the Office of Personnel Management, as well as the Office of Budget and Management, had told the agencies, the federal departments, that they need to start drawing up reorganization plans for that would include a massive reduction in force. And so this incentive payment is one of the tools available to the agencies before that reduction in force means layoffs. So they're able to offer people these buyouts, essentially. There are also some agencies that are looking at early retirement programs that could be authorized for use before we start to see the reduction in force come in the form of massive layoffs across the federal government, Joe and Savannah.
All right, Aaron Gilchrist at the White House. Aaron, thank you.
Well, as the trade war between the U.S. and Canada heats up, a movement to buy Canadian and boycott American goods is gaining popularity.
NBC News correspondent Jay Gray joined us now from Ottawa, Canada, with more on this. Jay, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Joe. Good morning, Savannah. And yeah, we all know that Canadians have a well-earned reputation of being kind, of being composed, reserved, but we're also quickly learning that our neighbors to the north, when they feel like they've been slighted, feel like they've been challenged, they are quick to stand up and push back. Anxiety, frustration, even anger, brewing across Canada right now.
It's a very uneasy feeling.
With the tug of war over tariffs and President Trump suggesting the U.S. could absorb their country as a state.
It's having a huge ripple effect across the country. I mean, we're in limbo at the moment. It's awful. Not knowing which direction we're going with.
A ripple going into a wave of Canadian nationalism. Protests outside the U.S. Embassy. Booing the American anthem. And as the trade war intensifies, buying things made at home, or really anywhere but America.
Mexico.
Government-run stores pulling American wine and liquor from shelves. The common thread here.
A lot of people feel betrayed by our closest ally.
Emma Cochran's wildly popular hoodie, shirts, and caps providing a direct response to the political rhetoric driving a wedge between the countries.
And this felt like a way that we could participate and just kind of say, we're going to stand up for Canada.
While back at the coffee shop, one of the most requested drinks, the Americano, has a new name.
And a friend came in and said, you know, with everything going on, you should change it to Canadiano.
Served with a side of Canadian resolve and pride. You know, the Americano, a big seller at Morning Owl before the name changed, but in the week after it became the Canadiano, the sales doubled. That's certainly, Joe and Savannah, not a scientific poll, but what a lot of people are saying is it really does show the commitment, the pride Canadians have in their country right now, and they're unwilling to back down.
All right, Jay Gray, thank you very much. Well, the Department of Homeland Security is using polygraphs on employees to determine who might be leaking information about immigration operations, according to 4 sources familiar with the practice.
The DHS officials are upset that ICE arrest numbers have been lower than expected, and they're blaming it on leaks to the media revealing where they plan to carry out operations.
NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen's been following this. He joins us with the latest. John, good morning. So what exactly do we know about this issue and how these polygraphs are being carried out?
Hey, good morning, guys. As my kids would say, no cap on the lie detectors. They are being employed right now by DHS broadly to try to stop leakers. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem has said that they are going to prosecute people who have been found to leak. Of course, the science behind polygraphs is not exactly settled. There are U.S. security agencies that employ polygraphs from time to time, including the Secret Service. but this is absolutely creating a chilling effect beyond, sort of beyond the immigration raids and beyond the ICE agency itself, but farther throughout DHS. I spoke to somebody who's worked there for a long time this last week who said, that they're going to go dark now. They're not going to talk to reporters at all anymore because it's just not worth it, even though they were not talking about immigration issues.
John, a couple questions here. First, does HHS have an official response to some of this reporting? And then also just give us some historical perspective here. Have we seen tests like this carried out in the past?
Yeah, so the response of DHS officials is yes. We've seen that from Secretary Noem. We've seen it from her spokesperson, Tricia McLaughlin. Basically, they have said they can and will use these polygraphs to figure out who's leaking information. There's every agency has its own rules, has its own laws, but there is a history of this within the U.S. government. It's not something new. Doesn't tend to be, about leaks to reporters always. There are other reasons to use polygraphs within an agency to determine who's telling the truth or who's lying about various things when there are, for instance, internal investigations.
John, I know at this point, is this right, that 2 employees have been accused so far of leaking information? What do we know about their situations?
So that's what Secretary Noem has said. I'm not up on exactly who these people are, or what they're accused of leaking, and what the evidence of that is. So might have to wait a little bit longer to find out just the specifics of that.
All right, Jonathan Allen, thank you very much.
The clock is ticking once again for Congress to avoid a government shutdown. Lawmakers have until the end of this week to pass a spending bill to keep things up and running. Republicans revealed their newest funding plan over the weekend, but it's still unclear whether they have enough votes to pass it. NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor has the latest.
The countdown to a potential government shutdown is on as a Friday night deadline looms large. House Speaker Mike Johnson unveiling a new bill that would fund the government through the end of September. But it's not clear whether Johnson has the votes to pass it, with some Republicans already criticizing the legislation.
The CR is terrible on defense and the border.
The so-called clean continuing resolution does include an increase in defense spending while reducing non-defense spending. President Trump urging his party to support the bill, writing online, all Republicans should vote please, yes, next week. And though Republicans control the House and Senate, the slim majority in the House means just 2 Republican defections there could derail the bill. And there's already trouble with 2 GOP congressmen. Thomas Massey is a no, and Brian Fitzpatrick is undecided.
But I think we're really going to be learning over the next 24 hours what's in it and what's not in it.
The bill would also require Democratic votes in the Senate, and many in that party are accusing Republicans of recklessly cutting things like health care and nutritional assistance.
I would argue we are already in a partial government shutdown, and that's because of what Elon Musk and his Doge frat bros are doing.
And amid increased economic uncertainty about federal cuts and a possible shutdown, President Trump saying this when questioned about whether he is expecting a recession this year.
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says he plans to bring the bill up for a vote as early as Tuesday. It's a crucial test for the new Republican majority in Washington as both sides trade blame. Back to you.
Yamiche, thank you.
Well, this morning, the Secret Service is investigating a shooting near the White House involving their agents and an armed man who traveled from miles away. NBC News White House correspondent Von Hilliard has the details.
Troubling questions after a shooting near the White House.
Respond for the shooting, 17th East Street, Northwest.
Secret Service saying their agents shot a man after an armed confrontation with law enforcement, after they were notified of a suicidal individual traveling to D.C. According to 2 senior law enforcement officials, the suspect is 27-year-old Andrew Dawson, driving this white Chrysler sedan from Indiana.
Units approached from the 18th Street side.
That's when just 1 block from here, authorities found the man's parked vehicle and then spotted somebody who matched the man's description here, and that's when shots ensued. The close proximity of the gunshots to the White House heightening new concerns about security around the president, who spent the weekend in Palm Beach. President Trump survived an assassination attempt last year at a Pennsylvania campaign rally, and then while golfing on his West Palm Beach course 2 months later. Sean Curran, who was the Secret Service special agent in charge of his detail during the Butler attack, is now the agency's director. The security of the president and Vice President Vance of pinnacle concern. Vance, with his 3-year-old daughter, approached on the sidewalks of Cincinnati on Saturday by protesters supportive of Ukraine. Vance posting that the protesters followed us around and shouted as my daughter grew increasingly anxious and scared, though noting it was a mostly respectful conversation.
I said, if I talk to you for a few minutes, will you leave my 3-year-old daughter alone? And you said yes. So I'd like you guys to respect.
Our thanks to Von Hilliard for that report. Well, the Secret Service says Dawson was transported to a hospital near the White House for care. Meanwhile, police say they did recover a gun from the scene.
Federal investigators want to know why a small plane crashed into a residential part of Pennsylvania over the weekend. The plane went down shortly after taking off yesterday from Lancaster Airport, damaging several cars. But officials say no one on the ground was hurt, and all 5 people on board survived the crash and were taken to hospitals for treatment. No word yet on how severely they were injured. NBC News correspondent Marissa Parra has more on what happened.
Terrifying moment in southern Pennsylvania, where the governor says a small private plane crashed near Lancaster Airport.
They're receiving multiple calls for a aircraft crash at the airport.
The FAA says the plane, known as a Beechcraft Bonanza, crashed around 3 p.m. local time. Authorities say 5 people were on board. Air traffic control indicating there may have been a serious incident in the lead-up.
Lancaster Tower, Bonanza 347 Mike has an open door. We need to return for a landing.
Mike, pull up. Rescue 1, Lancaster Tower. The aircraft is down out just behind the terminal on the parking lot street area.
Dramatic video shows thick smoke and flames billowing out of cars. The governor says the Pennsylvania State Police is on the ground to assist first responders. This video showing part of the plane lying on top of cars near this building. This crash coming after a string of aviation crashes and close calls in the last 2 months.
And our thanks to Marissa Parra for that report.
Well, firefighters on New York's Long Island have made big progress containing a massive brush fire that burned hundreds of acres over the weekend. The flames are now at least 80% contained, but investigators are still working to figure out what sparked it. Meanwhile, the South got hit with wild weather of its own: rain, hail, even snow. Here's NBC News correspondent Maya Eaglin with more.
An around-the-clock battle on New York's Long Island. Officials finally getting the upper hand, but worried the worst could still be ahead.
We are concerned because the winds are still blowing, that it might spark up again.
The area, a tinderbox with drought-like conditions. Thousands of trees were destroyed. Buildings burned too.
My God!
Mark Cirillo's business is one of them.
When you see this destruction, how does it make you feel?
It's upsetting. I watched flames go up to our property, up to the building, and up and over the top of the building, and I watched it like there was a giant hand.
While down south, Texas reeling from severe storms that battered the state with a mix of rain and hail. Even snow. The storm turning deadly near Dallas, winds ripping this building apart. But back in Long Island, crews keeping an eye on hot spots while the search for answers has already begun.
It's too early to tell whether or not this fire was started naturally or there's some nefarious origin. But we are going to get to that, and we should have an answer within the next couple of days.
We're also hearing from investigators that they're going to be using drone surveillance and ground crews to try and figure out how and why this fire actually happened. Back to you.
All right, Maya, thank you.
A lot of weather headlines over the weekend, so what can we expect this week? Let's bring in meteorologist Michelle Grossman.
She's tracking the latest on some rainy weather that's lingering across the southeast. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Great to see you. Happy Monday. Yeah, it's a soggy start in the southeast. We're looking at the chance for moderate to heavy rainfall, and that will bring the chance for some flash flooding. You can see the rain falling already. It's been falling for a day or so. It's going to continue to fall today before it moves completely out on Tuesday. But you notice the brighter colors. That's where we're seeing the heavier pockets of rain, and that's where we could see the chance for some flash flooding. This is beneficial rain, by the way, in portions of the Carolinas, but still it's a soggy start, and we're going to see that rainfall all day long. Could see a few embedded thunderstorms as well. Clear to see where that front is. That's that line kind of crossing the peninsula of Florida, and that's where we're going to see that heavy rain staying put. So we do have flood alerts. That includes Jacksonville, where you see in this green area. That is the likeliest spot for seeing some flooding. Again, could see some flash flooding as well. Here is the setup. We have an area of low pressure just moving slowly over the state. It's bringing that rain. It's just lingering all day long before it finally moves out. The last place to move out will be in the Carolinas, from North Carolina, South Carolina to portions of Georgia as well. And notice the heaviest amounts will fall in North Carolina and South Carolina, from Wilmington to Myrtle Beach and also Charleston. Again, that's where you see those brighter colors, and that's where we expect the highest amounts of rain falling. Beneficial rain, but still kind of a pain on a Monday, and really not great to start out your work week that way. We do have wind alerts, too, in the northern tier of the nation. Really warm here. It's going to be gusty as far as the winds go. Winds gusting up to 65 miles per hour. Temperatures 20, 30, even 40 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. You kind of put that together, and we're going to see fire alerts here for 11 million people throughout the plains and northern plains, into the central plains, also portions of the southwest. So we will be concerned about that as we go throughout this Monday. We're going to watch that very closely. Winds could gust over 65 miles per hour. It's extremely dry in terms of the air and also the vegetation. So with the winds blowing, temperatures really warm, record highs too. We're going to see temperatures near 80 degrees in some spots. Omaha, 79 degrees. That is 31 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. Denver, 73. Wichita, 78 degrees. Warm too in Little Rock, 71. Notice that warm air all the way to the northeast. This is welcomed in the northeast because it's been chilly. We're kind of going up and down in terms of the temperatures. But 63 degrees today in New York City. That's 14 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. 66 in Charleston, West Virginia, and 69 in Bowling Green. We'll keep the spring warmth in place. A little preview to spring. 68 degrees in Philadelphia tomorrow. 16 degrees above normal. And notice that big dip in temperatures back to the Midwest. Milwaukee, 43 degrees after a warm day today. Just 55 in Des Moines. But we'll keep the warmth in place in Dallas, Memphis, Atlanta, and also Charlotte. Staying mild throughout the rest of the work week in New York City. 50 on Thursday, 60 degrees on Friday. Temperatures in the mid-60s, even upper 70s in Raleigh, 77 on Wednesday, 76 on Thursday, 78 degrees on Friday. So as we look at the week ahead in overall picture, we're watching those rain and storms today in the southeast, record highs in the northern tier of the nation. And then notice the Pacific Northwest. We're looking at a little rain and snow. That will change drastically on Wednesday. We have a powerful system that's going to get its act together on Wednesday. This will be our next cross-country weather maker, and it's going to bring a whole lot of impacts Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But for Wednesday, it's going to focus on the west coast, where we're looking at mountain snow and flooding rains along the coast. Plenty of sunshine on Wednesday in the middle of the nation before that rain does arrive, and spring warmth still along the Carolinas into the southeast. Friday, that storm system makes its way into the middle of the country. Now we're talking heavy snow for the Intermountain West, rain from North Dakota into the Midwest, down to portions of the Gulf Coast states, and yet again, more rain and snow throughout the West. So guys, that's going to be something we're going to watch, because we're looking at the chance for some severe weather also by later on this week with that big system. But first, it will start out in the West on Wednesday. Back to you.
Reminder, it's still winter in many parts of the country.
Yeah.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.